بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace and blessings be upon you. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Quran for All Seasons. I'm your host, Joseph Lombard, Professor of Quranic Studies in the College of Islamic Studies at Hamad bin Khalifa University in Doha. In this episode, we will discuss Sūrat al-Māʿūn, which could be translated Small Kindnesses, and which is the 107th surah of the Quran. Most commentators maintain that Sūrat al-Māʿūn is an early Meccan surah from the first years of the Prophet Muhammad's mission, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. From this perspective, Sūrat al-Māʿūn was most likely revealed after Sūrat at-Takāthur, the 102nd surah of the Quran. Both surahs speak to the stingy and rapacious nature of the Meccan leaders. Some commentators maintain that verses 4 through 7 of Sūrat al-Māʿūn were revealed in the later years of the Prophet's mission in Medina. This latter interpretation appears to come from an effort to link the reference to prayer in these verses to the prayers of the hypocrites within the Muslim community in Medina, for it did not become advantageous to feign one's adherence to Islam until the later Medinan period. But as we will see, this interpretation can still stand regardless of when the surah was revealed, since the contexts of revelation, the asbab an-nuzul, do not always limit the range of similar actions to which verses could refer. It is most likely that the whole of the surah was revealed in Mecca, and that the references to prayers in verses 4 through 7 are to the forms of prayer in which the Meccan leaders engaged as part of the pagan religion of Mecca in pre-Islamic Arabia. As has been discussed in previous episodes of Quran for All Seasons, which examined Surahs al-Kawthar 108, al-Kafirun 109, and al-Nasr 110, Sūrat al-Māʿūn marks the beginning of a series of surahs that draw a stark contrast between the religion of the Meccan leaders in pre-Islamic Arabia and the religion of Islam. This contrast is discussed in full in episode 6 of Quran for All Seasons, which examines Sūrat al-Nasr. As regards the relation of Sūrat al-Māʿūn to the previous surah, Sūrat al-Quraysh, Sūrat al-Quraysh alludes to the great wealth that God afforded the Meccan leaders by making their journeys easy and allowing Mecca to become a profitable trading center. Sūrat al-Māʿūn then reveals that despite the abundance that God had granted them, the Meccan leaders were stingy and greedy, using their wealth for personal gain. When they had a chance to work for the betterment of all, they chose instead to increase social and economic disparities, refusing even small kindnesses, al-Māʿūn, to the poor and to the downtrodden. For purposes of our discussion today, we will use the following translation. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the Merciful, the Compassionate. Have you seen the one who says the religion is a lie? That is the one who pushes away the orphan and does not urge feeding the destitute. So woe unto those who pray yet are heedless of their prayers. Those who strive to be seen, yet refuse small kindnesses. The one, alladhi, in verse 1, is said to refer to Abu Sufyan, who was in the habit of making a weekly sacrifice to the Meccan deities. It is reported that when an orphan came to him requesting food, Abu Sufyan drove him away by striking him. In this instance, Abu Sufyan serves as an example of those who, when performing rituals to uphold the mores of society, refuse the needs and rights of society's most downtrodden. That he claims the religion is a lie indicates that he denies the revelation brought by the Prophet Muhammad, and that Abu Sufyan's own actions deny the efficacy of his own religion. The 20th century Pakistani scholar Amin Ahsan Islahi interprets the one as a reference to Abu Lahab, who was the treasurer of Mecca, administering all the funds collected from the pilgrims. In this sense, the surah alludes to the corrupt economic system in which funds are collected by the wealthy, but those in greatest need, the orphan and the destitute, are still driven away and neglected. Whether these verses were revealed in reference to a specific individual or not, they still have a general implication. The accusation of pushing away or driving away the orphan also alludes to the habit of devouring the inheritances of orphans that is discussed in several other verses of the Quran, such as Sūrat al-Fajr, verses 17 through 20. كَلَّا بَل لَا تُكْرِمُونَ الْيَتِيمَ وَلَا تَحَاضُّونَ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ وَتَأْكُلُونَ التُّرَاثَ أَكْلًا لَمًّا وَتُحِبُّونَ الْمَالَ حُبًّا جَمًّا. Nay, but you honor not the orphan, nor do you urge feeding the destitute. You devour inheritance with rapacious devouring, and love wealth with abounding love. Now, religion in Sūrat al-Māʿūn in this verse translates the word deen, and denying religion implies that one denies all aspects of the message that was sent through the prophet. Deen could also mean judgment, as when we use the phrase Yawm ad-Din, the day of judgment. In this sense, it relates to the denial of the resurrection and other events of the afterlife. In this vein, Ibn Barajan observes that those who have no notion that their actions are recompense, are requited, believe that they can act with impunity, and this is why they have no regard for the downtrodden in society. Now, as Fakhruddin al-Razi observes, when we view verses 2 through 7 in relation to verse 1, the implication is that denying deen, whether you understand it as referring to religion or to judgment or to both, that denying this is the root of all other sins and transgressions. While verse 2 indicates the aggressive manner in which the leaders of a corrupt society repel the orphans, verse 3 indicates the callousness that leads them to ignore the needs of all who are downtrodden or destitute, miskeen. This verse can also be read, and does not encourage giving the food of the destitute. Now here, the food of the destitute implies that the food which is being withheld is something to which the destitute have a right. Since the believers, as stated in verse 19 of Sūrat al-Dhariyat, are those in whose wealth is a due for the beggar and for the deprived. الَّذِينَ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. On the one hand, verse 3 of Sūrat al-Māʿūn is admonishing one who does not urge oneself to feed the indigent. On the other hand, it admonishes one who implores others not to do so, such that one is not only stingy with one's own money, but encourages stinginess among others. This is related to verse 47 of Sūrat Yasin, Surah 36, where those who do not wish that their wealth be used to feed the needy offer a pseudo-theological excuse for their stinginess, saying, "Are we to feed one whom, if God willed, he would feed him? أَنُّطْعِمُ مَن لَّوْ يَشَاءُ اللَّهُ أَطْعَمَهُ إِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا فِي ضَلَالٍ مُّبِينٍ." Truly, you are in clear error. Verses 4 and 5 turn to a direct condemnation of those whose prayers are empty, batil. Woe translates the Arabic wail, which foreshadows punishment and destruction that will befall. Here, those who pray most likely refers to those who observed the prayers of the Meccan religion that preceded Islam. Here, those who pray most likely refers to those who observed the prayers of the Meccan religion that preceded Islam. Regarding their various rituals, God says in verse 35 of Surah 8, "Their prayer at the house is but whistling and clapping. وَمَا كَانَ صَلَاتُهُمْ عِنْدَ الْبَيْتِ إِلَّا مُكَاءً وَتَصْدِيًا." And the surah goes on, or the verse goes on, فَذُوقُوا الْعَذَابَ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْفُرُونَ. That is addressing the disbelievers, saying, "So taste the punishment for your having disbelieved, or for that which you disbelieved." Now, that these people are heedless of their prayers thus indicates that they are unaware that their religion has no foundation in revelation. These are the progeny of Abraham, to whom God refers in verse 59 of Sūrat Maryam, Surah 19. Then after them came posterity who neglected prayer and followed base desires. فَخَلَفَ مِن بَعْدِهِمْ خَلْفٌ أَضَاعُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَاتَّبِعُوا الشَّهَوَاتِ. Many commentators relate these verses of Sūrat al-Māʿūn to Muslims who are heedless of their prayers and who, because of such heedlessness, receive no benefit from their prayers when they perform them, and fear no retribution when they do not perform them. Others relate this verse to hypocrites who pray in public, but not in private. It could also be interpreted as applying to one who performs all the prayers properly, but fails to do so with humility, contemplation, and remembrance of God. This latter interpretation being somewhat extreme. Now, it is important to note that verse 5 employs the ism fa'il for those who are heedless, or could also be translated negligent. So the word is sāhūn, rather than using the verbal form, yashu. This indicates that it is not a reference to those who may slack off occasionally in prayer, to which most of us are susceptible. Rather, it is a reference to those whose state of being is that they are never mindful or are always neglectful of their prayers. The verse also uses the preposition an, which usually is translated from, indicating that their heedlessness or neglect removes them from prayer. This can be understood to mean that these verses indicate those whose hearts are never present in prayer. In this vein, the early Quran commentator Ibn Atta is reported to have said, "There is no place in the Quran where there is a difficult threat, but that it is followed by a gentle promise, except for this verse. So woe unto those who pray, yet are heedless of their prayers." Mentioning the woe for one who prays without being present in his heart. Those who strive to be seen are those who do not perform the prayer out of any sense of reverence, taqwa, but only to maintain appearances. In the context of those who perform the rituals of the pre-Islamic religion in Mecca, it also indicates those who upheld these rituals in order to maintain the unjust social order from which they would benefit. That such people refuse small kindnesses indicates the depth of their hypocrisy and depravity. Small kindnesses, al-Māʿūn, refers to little things that one may give to another that do not impose any hardship or difficulty upon oneself to give. To refuse sharing such kindnesses or extending such kindnesses indicates an unconscionable degree of stinginess. Although these verses fit together as a coherent unit, condemning the religion of pre-Islamic Arabia, the Meccans in particular, many later commentators, as mentioned before, interpreted verses 4 through 7 as a reference to the hypocrites of Medina, who feigned adherence to Islam while questioning the instructions of the Prophet ﷺ. In this interpretation, those who are heedless or neglectful of their prayers would indicate those regarding whom God says in Sūrat an-Nisa, "Verily, the hypocrites seek to deceive God. إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ." But it is God who deceives them. Allahu huwa khadi'uhum. Literally, God is the deceiver of them. When they establish prayer, they perform it idly. إِذَا قَامُوا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ قَامُوا كُسَالَى. And to be seen of men, and they remember God, but little. يُرَاعُونَ النَّاسَ وَلَا يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Such people receive little benefit from their prayers when they perform them, and fear no retribution when they do not. They will pray when in public, but neglect their prayers when in private. Given that their hearts are closed to God, they are also closed to human beings. Thus they fail to give charity, and they stint when required to give alms. Of such people, God says, they only come to their prayer lazily and only spend reluctantly. وَلَا يَأْتُونَ الصَّلَاةَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كُسَالَى وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَ إِلَّا وَهُمْ كَارِهُونَ. أقول هذا وأستغفر الله. Thank you again for joining us for this episode of Quran for All Seasons. This episode was brought to you by a generous grant from the Radius Foundation. If you enjoyed it and found it of benefit, please be sure to share and to give us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever podcasting service you may use. Thank you again. Peace be with you.